Greetings, subscribers and guests of the channel. I present to your attention another weekly report of the events taking place. And so we begin. The Black Wizards are conducting a worldwide series of assassinations aimed at leading members of the government who are desperately trying to avoid war crimes tribunals. This provoked a reaction from the White Hats, as a result of which rewards were awarded for dozens of war criminals. The $1 billion reward for the U.S. Ambassador to Japan, Rahm Emanuel, caused a secret storm that led to further awards being suspended. The award for Emanuel has been suspended because, as the so-called U.S. Ambassador, he is the high-ranking official responsible for eliminating more than 500 Japanese citizens with miraculous cocktails. Emanuel went berserk and called me six to ask for protection and accuse his boss Barack the Thunder of Satan Obama. Subsequently, Emanuel was told that the award given for him would be cancelled as soon as he publicly announced his resignation from the post of ambassador. Me6 also informed the White Hats that $1 billion was too much of a reward for a high-ranking official like Emanuel. Thus, a reward of 10 tons of gold, about $750 million, has now been set for Obama. In addition, a reward of 1 ton of gold was set at about £75 million sterling. In addition, the alliance has awarded the same award to 16 U.S. government officials. They are accused of publicly supporting the chaos in Gaza. Senator Lindsey Graham, in a sign that he fears the issuance of a warrant for his arrest, says that the United States should impose sanctions on an international criminal. In addition, the prosecutor of the International Criminal Court, Karim Khan, says that he received threats during the investigation against high-ranking Israeli officials. Don't worry, Karim. We've got your back. To date, 124 governments around the world have pledged to enforce the warrants issued by the IC. Chief Diplomat Josep Borrell said, all states that have ratified the IC statutes are obliged to enforce the court's decisions. The leaders of Germany, France, and other signatories of the IC have also promised to enforce the arrest warrants. Netanyahu says, accusing me of crimes in Gaza is like accusing George W. Bush of 9/11. The people who ordered Bush's execution also forced Britain's puppet Prime Minister Rishi Sunak to dissolve his government and call new elections after his refusal to recognize his country's legal obligation to enforce arrest warrants. Opinion polls show that his party is certain to be defeated in the July 4th elections. British MP Andrew Bridgen says, it's all a pantomime in Parliament. This is not a race between the blue and red teams to see who crosses the finish line. This is a transfer of authority on all important issues. In other words, the next administration is likely to be made up of people who are still called conspiracy theorists in the corporate media. However, it is clear that something else is brewing there. The royal family announced that they would reschedule all dates so as not to affect the general election. At the same time, the UK government has set up a preparation website urging all citizens to prepare for a serious emergency. This emergency will be an attempted coup d'etat by German security forces, Me6 warns. As proof of this, former Prime Minister Boris Johnson hosted a Ukrainian neo-Nazi unit in Parliament. Johnson said, many thanks to the heroes of the Azov Brigade who honored us with their presence tonight. Former squad leader Andriy Beletsky said in 2010 that Ukraine's goal was to lead the white races of the world in the last crusade against the Semitic lead. At a meeting in Parliament, Johnson was pictured with the Azov banner featuring the neo-Nazi symbol Wolfsangel. In Parliament, Johnson continued, give them a weapon. Give them permission to use these weapons outside their own borders. A sign that the British are plotting war, Sunak said he did not want to be a military prime minister. By the way, according to the Pentagon, Rishi Sunak is waiting for a comfortable job in San Diego, California. According to Me6 sources, Simon Keyes is a man who is trying to drag the country into war in order to prevent the formation of a new government. The reward of 1 ton of gold per case has also been suspended for this reason. The distribution of awards to leading Western Black Hats led to a meeting of representatives of Western White Hats with representatives of the Japanese underworld and leaders of Asian secret societies last Sunday. Much of what was discussed at the 3-hour meeting remains secret to protect current operations. However, the Asians were told that the proposal to create a future $100 trillion planning agency was supported by the Rothschilds, Black Sun, the Pentagon, and the British Commonwealth. At first, the Asians were skeptical. They said they did not trust Westerners, but agreed to support the plan as soon as they fulfilled their duty to gold. It also became clear to the Asians that the only resistance to this plan now comes from the Rockefeller faction, the Obamas. That's why her demonic-looking treasurer Janet Yellen is threatening sanctions on European banks supporting the White Hat plan. Asians admitted that in 2008 they were deceived by the promise of the communist president to transfer $23 billion to support the activities of black hats. At that time, they did not yet know that Obama was the grandson of Adolf Hitler. Asians also said that the head of the Red-Green Secret Society with its millions of members had recently died of natural causes. It is believed that the new head, whose name we cannot name, is more friendly to the White Caps. This means that it is only a matter of time before China, Taiwan, Japan, and Korea, along with ASEAN and military rivalry, and instead focus on friendly relations. It was also decided that the Treaty of San Francisco, signed after the surrender of Japan at the end of World War I, is invalid. In addition, the secret societies were given a list with the names of people responsible for the murders committed with the help of miracle cocktails. A sign that something is being done is that they are now openly talking on television about the dangers of injections. Another result of the meeting was an East-West agreement on the creation of a polycentric world system designed to replace the hegemony of the Khazars focused on the United Nations. Of course, the remaining Black Hat leaders will fight to the last to start World War III, eliminating 90% of humanity and enslaving the rest. That is why Secretary of State Anthony Blinken, NATO Chief Jens Stoltenberg, and others demand that American weapons be used to hit targets deep inside Russian territory. Anyone who makes such a call identifies himself as a psycho and is subject to destruction. The official representative of the Russian Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Maria Zakharova, called the recent trip of Secretary of State Anthony Blinken to Kiev a visit of Satan. The lyrics of the song he performed in a Nazi bar read, "We have a kinder, softer machine gun hand," Zakharova said. Look at Blinken's eyes, they're black. Then look into his eyes when he is called a war criminal. They're not black, and he looks scared. He knows the game is over. He knows that the Biden show is going to end soon. Look at the pathetic and apathetic crowd at an event in New Hampshire last week. Compare that to the 100 or more people Trump gets. Italian television shows how the rest of the world feels about Biden and his administration. For example, you just got the former head of the FBI, James Comey, to appear on Rockefeller television with a very fake appearance to warn Trump is going after the FBI and the Department of Justice. Another crook who is still on the loose is Justin Trudeau. Compare Trudeau in 2010 with Trudeau wielding guns today. Obviously, these are different Trudeaus. This kind of forgery no longer works. In the real world, the Black Hats have already lost the operation in Ukraine, and soon they will also lose to Israel and the U.S. corporation. In a sign that the war is over, Russian President Vladimir Putin told Reuters that he is ready to put an end to the special operation in Ukraine by negotiating a ceasefire, recognizing the current front lines. This confirms that Russia adheres to the agreement with the Gnostic Illuminati on the transformation of the Dnieper River into the border between Eastern and Western Europe. Resistance to the war is also growing in most other European countries. In Germany, German Chancellor Olaf Scholz continues to reject NATO's calls for attacks deep inside Russia. Hungary also does not want to participate in the NATO military mission in Ukraine. According to Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban, Budapest is instead reviewing its role in the organization. In addition, it was found that Russian silencers do not allow 90% of American weapons to hit their targets. After Ukraine, it will be Israel's turn. As a sign that it will soon cease to exist and be replaced by the nation-state of Judea, Palestine, Ireland, Spain, and Norway have announced their decision to recognize Palestine as an independent state. This is what Spain's Deputy Prime Minister Yolanda Díaz says. Palestine will be free from the river to the sea. This means that 146 of the 193 member states, including Russia, recognize Palestine. Only 9 countries are against it. The Israeli people also hold daily demonstrations against their government, and mounted thugs are unable to suppress them. Israel, as we know, is being dismantled step by step. The world is definitely tired of their dirty deeds. It's time for a global purge, says a Mossad source. However, cornered psychos are at the epicenter of a very dangerous latest attack on Iran and Saudi Arabia. The assassination of President Ebrahim Raisi is a typical example of this. Iran knows perfectly well that the Mossad carried out a targeted assassination attempt on President Raisi and his team. Of the 3 helicopters, only his helicopter crashed, and that was because of fog. This is looking more and more like a planned operation and, most likely, an insider job. All satellite weather data on the day of the Iranian president's plane crash was also deleted. They are doing everything now because they know what awaits them. These are not Hanukkah gifts, says a Mossad source. Shortly after Raisi's death, Iranian police chief Ahmad Reza Radan and the head of Iranian intelligence in Loristan province in Iran were killed. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov also says he finds it hard to believe that U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken will publicly declare that the Iranian people will be better off after Raisi's death. Iranian sources have informed us that Supreme Leader Khamenei is not responsible for Raisi's death. Citizen Khamenei said that the old days of bloody dynasties are over and his son will not succeed him. In my opinion, the next leader of Iran will be former Iranian President Mohammad Khatami, even if Iran does not officially accuse Israel of the murder because it does not want to give the United States a reason for World War II. This does not mean that no action will be taken. IRG Commander-in-Chief Hossein Salami and Quds Force Chief Esmail Khani met on the sidelines of Raisi's funeral with leaders and representatives of Iran's proxy groups, including Hamas, Hezbollah, Palestinian Islamic Jihad, PFLP, Ansarullah Houthis, and militant groups from Iraq. More than 7 million people attended the funeral. During the meeting, the participants discussed recent regional developments and stressed the continuation of jihad until victory is won in the Gaza Strip, according to IRGC-affiliated media. In response, the Houthis announced that they had destroyed 3 ships linked to Israel with missiles, including one in the Mediterranean Sea. In addition, last week, for the first time, the Egyptian Ministry of Defense declassified hundreds of materials and documents related to the October 1973 war. According to sources, the documents show that EGYPT has won this war and is ready to attack again with Turkey if Netanyahu and his associates are not arrested. These attacks on Iran may have been aimed at preventing Iran from cooperating with Russia in creating an alternative to the US dollar in Operation Gaddafi 2.0. It seems that a similar motive is at work in Saudi Arabia. According to French intelligence, 10 Saudi princes have recently been eliminated. In addition, their leader Mohammed bin Salman canceled a planned visit to Japan at the last minute because his long-dead father was ill. We know that King Salman has been dead for about 2 years. They're continuing this case as long as possible, says a CIA source. Most likely, they will officially announce the death of the king soon. Most sources refuse to comment on this issue, but it is obvious that the power struggle for control of Saudi oil and the petrodollar continues. Alex Jones says that all this is part of an attempt to kill all the leaders who support Russia's war in Ukraine. A week ago, they shot Fico 5 times, and now the Iranian president is dead. This is not accidental, and new actions will follow. This is a shadow war that is leading us to a world war. The Black Dragon Society is already waging an undeclared war in Africa and Oceania. This is why New Caledonia is on fire and why France has been expelled from many African states, and others will follow. That's why. In 14 African countries that used to be French colonies, there is a colonial tax which leads to significant annual payments to France amounting to about $500 billion. These countries were under French oppression until 1958 and then gained independence. However, states such as Benin, Burkina Faso, Côte d'Ivoire, Guinea, Mali, Niger, Senegal, Togo, Cameroon, Central African Republic, Chad, Congo, Equatorial Guinea, and Gabon still bear the burden of paying colonial taxes. The combined population of these 14 countries is 174 million people, and the total nominal GDP is $196 billion, while the PPP GDP is $411 billion. Officially, France has ended its colonization policy, but the economic colonization of these African states continues. Part of the budget of the colonies continues to flow to the Central Bank of France under various names and categories. Thus, France can appropriate about 85% of the annual income of the former colonies. As a result, African countries are facing financial difficulties and are forced to repay their own money as debt to the French central bank. To get their funds back, African countries can request no more than 20% of the transferred amount. If you apply for a larger amount, the former colonizer can veto it. France claims that it is simply paying back money spent on buildings and infrastructure built more than a century ago. The refusal of an African ruler to pay a colonial tax often leads to a coup instigated by France. The recent coup in Niger is different. The coup overthrew a French-backed president. The Africans have had enough. These are the coups that have taken place in the French colonies over the past 3 years. Of the 14 countries under French control in Africa, 8 more are under occupation. The end is near. In the first 7 months of fiscal year 2024, which began last October, net interest payments totaled $514 billion, which is $20 billion more than defense spending. That's why the rats are in the process of saving the ship. Most recently, the chairman of the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, Dick Martin Grunberg, left. Others fight to the bitter end. The report says Google wrote a check to the U.S. Department of Justice to get prosecutors to drop their antitrust damages claim. So here's what they did with the 125 billion Australian pension funds they accidentally deleted. White hats are chasing Google owners, and soon they will be on the other side with Klaus Schwab. Speaking of Schwab, before he was eliminated and sent to travel the rainbow, Klaus Schwab Rothschild stated that he was the trustee of the future of the earth. Why didn't the media show this in the news? Now he is dead and his future of the livestock farm has been cancelled. People will decide their own future. However, some of his henchmen are still trying to carry out his plans. Perhaps that is why Boeing is under threat. The latest release says 300 Boeing aircraft operated by United and American Airlines have a potentially fatal defect that could cause the planes to explode in midair, the latest blow to the infamous company. This is probably all part of a larger plan. At first, there were no pilots because of cocktails, and now there are no planes because of defective materials in production. Now we get headlines like, a warning about the chaos of summer travel after the Boeing safety crisis leads to a shortage of planes. Maybe they just want to dissuade people from traveling. They want us to live only 15 minutes away from cities in accordance with the WEF plan for the 2030 agenda. This will not happen, but because our group will continue to operate until they are permanently removed and put on trial by military tribunals, they also continue to try to attack farmers. Most recently, the governments of Australia and New Zealand burned down bee farms after traces of Fulbrigh's disease were allegedly discovered. There are no bees. There is no food. There is no life. The Australians have also released one of the most ridiculous horror films ever. This is about a new mutation flooding the country, the so-called flirting variety, flirting. You read it right. Anyone who succumbs to this nonsense is beyond salvation and will continue to take boosters.